Well, hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations, and I'm delighted that you're here with me today. If you have subscribed, thank you. If you haven't yet, I invite you to. We come at you twice a week with different crafts, different projects, different makeovers. You never know what I'm up to. Often, I don't know what I'm up to. Today, I do know. I have this little stool that I had got. I can't even remember where I got it from. It doesn't have a thrifted tag on it. And quite honestly, I get people that drop things off, and bless your hearts, love you for doing it. By the time I get around to some items, I sometimes don't remember who the heck dropped it off. So if it was you, thank you, and here's your makeover. So, as you can see, this is a little tiny stool, fabric covered. It's got hinges. It's got a broken hinge, but it's got hinges. And a little bit of a storage area. So we need to zhuzh it up a little bit because it's definitely old and tired looking. And so the first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of the lid. Just so that we can focus on paint to start. So I'm just going to take this off. I'll have to pick up a new set of hinges just because I've got a broken one. So we know that's not going to work. And whether I get a set or I just get one more, it just depends upon the color that I'm able to find in the size that I need. So we're just going to take these off, and I'll worry about the recovering part next, because that's definitely going to be one of the fun parts of this. So that's my lid gone, but I still have part of my hinge hanging out over here. So I want to get rid of that. Now, paint color. All right, so we're dealing with my boredom factor. I'm tired of painting things in either apothecary, which I love that color, or in white because they're kind of farmhousey. And I love bohemian blue, but I love it in its lighter tones too. So I decided, y'all, we're just gonna mix up a new color because, well, no reason other than I feel like it. So let's take a big kind of honkin' scoop of my bohemian blue. And this blue, this is all DIY paint, which is a clay-based paint. This blue, although it looks really dark and kind of really deep navy, it's actually a really deep teal. So if you just add, well, why don't I just show you that? If you just add white to it, you start getting kind of lighter tones of teal. And it goes into more the greeny family. Greeny. I'm just making up words as I go. So it was kind of 2 scoops of bohemian blue, 2 scoops of white. But you can see that we start getting into a little bit of the green tones, and I just feel like kind of adding a little bit of apothecary into that because I never have. So let's see. I would expect it to stay and kind of go more, and I'm thinking I definitely want more white in this. I want to lighten it up a little bit more. This is darker than I want. So let's add 2 more. Nice color mixture. 2 more dollops. When I'm doing this for clients, I actually do it more precisely than this, but this is just I'm just doing it for a project. I just need enough for my project. And now we've got this kind of color, which has got kind of that teal cast to it. I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit more. And then I mix all this paint up, and then I start looking for other projects that I can use this color for, because I inevitably mix up more than I need for the one project, but that's okay. All right, so I like that. I like that color. All right, so let's close off all of this. And then we're just gonna paint. And I'm going to do 2 coats of paint. With a color like this, it's not going to need much more of that. Just looking to see if I had a paintbrush. I have an old brush hanging out over the side, and that'll do. So just let me show you what this color, I'll do it awkward for me, but perfect for you. Look what that color is going to look like. Very nice. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a coat, let it dry, apply a second coat. And when that's drying, and I'm going to do it inside as well, just so that it's got a nice finish on the inside too. Just one little piece of something that I got in there after I cleaned it. So I'm going to get this painted out, inside and out, 2 coats, and while it's drying, we will probably work on a recovering of the top. But it's going to be a quick, super cute, super fun little project. Now, when it comes to our stool top, I had debated just covering over this fabric because it's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's old, it's tired looking, but it's in pretty good shape. But I really think then that I'm going to have too much fabric on the lips, and it's going to prevent the lid from sitting nicely on our stool. So I think I'm left with no choice but to remove it all. Now, this black fabric was just glued down to make it look nicer when the lid was lifted. You know, usually you'd maybe have this as a chair seat, and so you don't care about what it looks like underneath, and you just leave this because this is all that you see. But because we're lifting this, you're going to see that part, and so you need to make it look a little bit pretty. So for this, what we're going to be doing is just simply, okay, good. It's not glued down. Maybe a little bit of the glue that seeped through from the black thing. But all that we're going to be looking at doing is lifting up the staples that have been used in all of the corners and kind of getting them out of the way, and then taking a look at what we're left with more than anything. Okay, this is our seat cushion, and this is the fabric that we took off of that seat cushion. And I've used it as a template. I've kind of roughly cut out this piece of just kind of like a fine canvas. And I've got paint on it already, so there you go. That's okay, I don't mind. What I did do was I took my seat cushion and I kind of went through some of my Jamie Ray stencils, Jamie Ray vintage stencils, and kind of measured out which ones would maybe fit. And I wanted it to be up and down this way, not up and down this way. So I'm gonna take this American Mills one and kind of center it in here. And this is the one that I'm going to use. And what I wanted to do was just kind of make sure that it fit on this piece rather than on my fabric, because this is ultimately what I want to center it on. So I didn't want to do something that fit on my fabric, but then I lost half of it when I went to actually attach it onto my form. So what I am going to do is I want to keep it in kind of the same color family. So I'm going to take that same bohemian blue and I'm going to stencil it on in the dark. So in its full strength, in the dark, in its full strength. And I have a piece of plastic down here that I'm just going to offload it onto. And I'm just going to stencil it down onto my fabric. Now, in doing this with fabric, you are going to have a little bit more paint on than if it was just doing it over top of wood or paper or something, because it has to soak down into your fabric. But you don't want so much that, again, it's going to bleed all over. So again, kind of good to do a lighter coat, then you can go back over it and, you know, add more if you need to. And as much as this will stain the fabric, I am going to seal my fabric once this is dry. So you could try and heat set this, but I figure people are going to be putting their feet on this. You want something that's going to be a little bit more durable. So I'm gonna seal this once it's dry. So for now, what I am gonna do is just continue stenciling and taking my time so that I get, you know, fairly good coverage, but mostly a nice crisp image, because I can't fix this after. I can't erase, I can't undo it, I can't, you know, sand it out or anything like I could if it was on a smooth surface. This is sunk down into my fabric. I get what I get. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to finish doing my stenciling, and then I will let it dry, and then we'll come back. Our base should be dry. This should be dry. We'll be ready to kind of do our sealing and maybe look at putting it back together again. Okay, this has had a chance to dry thoroughly, but before I go any further with this, I just want to heat set it. So I want to make sure that that paint is all heat set, all the wrinkles are out. I don't want it to run or anything like that. So also helps get the wrinkles out. So I'm going to just set this. This is a hot iron. It's kind of a workshop iron. No water in it, so just dry heat. And I'm just going to run this over all of this. You could put a piece of parchment over top of it if you want, but all I'm doing is just kind of heat setting my paint, getting the wrinkles out, and then letting the fabric cool off before I move on to the next step. Now that this is all dry, I want to lightly sand it. So I'm not necessarily looking at doing any major distressing, but I do want to just kind of knock back the top of some of the paint to just kind of make it feel smoother to the touch. So I just have a sanding block that has most of the grit already off of it, just to be able to smooth this out a little bit. I'll do a little light distressing here and there, but we just have that pale wood underneath it, so it's not going to be anything major. So I'm just going to get this sanded, and then I am going to take my DIY wax in clear, and I am going to wax this piece. So I'm going to do the waxing of it, just following sealing my fabric. So I'm going to get this all sanded, and I've got a cloth on the side to be able to to wipe it all back to get all of that extra dust off of it before I start the waxing. Before I start waxing my base, because it's all sanded and wiped down, I want to actually seal this. So I've heat sealed it, it's cooled down, and I'm actually gonna wax this fabric, but I don't wanna use my nice clean wax brush on the blue first and then go to, because I'm gonna pick up some dust from it. So I wanna wax my fabric first. And there's nothing wrong with waxing your fabric. It will seal your paint in just fine. I have waxed entire chairs. Once it is cured, once it's dry, it just feels like it's a soft leather. So this is gonna feel almost like a waxed canvas fabric, but it's gonna seal my paint in. So I just want a little bit of wax on here, and then I want to start rubbing it down into my fabric. And I find that just kind of going in circles, going back and forth, just kind of working it down in is more than enough. And quite honestly, I can't even feel that on there, but you're gonna be able to see where you put it. And that's gonna help repel a lot of the dirt and dust and grime, you know, just from the normal wear. And you can see that I'm kind of working around the outside a little bit before I hit the inside where that blue is, just so that I'm not gonna drag any of that color unnecessarily onto the rest of my fabric. Okay, and I'm not going all the way out because those are the edges that I'm gonna be stapling onto my base anyway. So I just wanna get all the top part. Get this stapled onto here, I am going to, got my fabric face down, and I just want to try and sort of center it here so that I have an idea of where it's going. Now, to be able to get this, I want to start by stapling kind of the top center and then kind of the bottom center, just to kind of check to make sure that I'm kind of in the right spot. Perfect. And I'm going to want to do the same on the sides. So I like to go one side and then the next, just to be able to work out wrinkles, centered. Okay, good. And then I'm gonna go work my way around. So I'm gonna kind of go from this top out toward the corner and top out toward the corner. And then I'll do the same, the bottom to the corner, and then each of these out to the corners, so that the corners are the last thing that I do. Just working around my hose here. Okay, so I'm actually gonna do it from here out. close to the corner. Now we're going to want to look at kind of pleating our edge. So taking a look at how do we want that corner to look from up top. So we can kind of take this in and then pinch this out. All right, so fold it all in nice and tight so that these are touching, and then, and I'm holding those with my middle fingers, and then pleat this out so that we get this kind of look, and nice and rounded, whoops, and nice and rounded here. So it looks like this, which means when I go to staple, I'm going to want to catch it there, and I want to catch it there, and then one up top. So all this excess we're going to cut away. So we do the same thing here. I'm going to want to take this one in a little closer, and that one's already there. So we take those in, and I hold them with my middle fingers, and then I take my 2 index fingers into that tuck and pull it out and hold it. And there we go. So we're going to do these last 2, and then we will look at the next step with it. But you can see that it's sitting nice and tight. It's going to look okay. So all I'm looking at doing now is just cutting away a little bit of the excess fabric. So I don't mind some of it being there, okay, because we're going to be gluing down over top of it. But I don't want all that bulk. And I do happen to have, I'm kind of working in the shop, so I'm working with what I got here. I do have some dark gray felt. And the nice thing about felt for this project is just that it doesn't fray, so I don't have to sew. Yay, we know I don't like sewing, not my strength. So anytime I don't have to do it is always a better day. In which case, what I do want is to have it so that it's going to sit on the inside of this. It's just going to cover off that wood backing. And I'm just going to do a rough cut and then even it out afterward, which if you see how rough my cut is, you would know. It really needs fixing. Okay. And we'll just smooth this out a little bit. Now, because felt sort of stretches, I'm going to want to start gluing it up toward the top. I mean, in the middle, so that I can pull it out to my edges so that it's going to be sitting fairly taut. That's a good word, taut. So let's see if my glue is hot. Yes, I got some heat there. So I'm going to want to lay down some glue. And because I'm going to be pulling this, I do want that little bit of glue to sit firmly. And then I want to do the same to my edging down here on the bottom. So I've got that roughly centered already, so that when I start pulling around these bottom edges and the top edges, it's going to sit. So perfect. So all that I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my glue and run a little bit of a bead along and kind of pull my fabric just a little bit, not crazy, but just so that it's going to line up and sit along there nicely. So I'm not going to try and rush it by trying to glue too much all at once. I just want to be able to get my fabric to sit there, and already I can see that I'm going to want to trim a bit off. Of that corner. Okay, and I'm going to do the same coming out. I think I'm going to do the bottom. I'm going to do all one side to start. So I'm going to do the bottom next. So I'm going to finish this off, and I'm going to buff down our wooden base, and then all that's left to do is to attach our hinges. So stay tuned for that. Okay, our seat cushion has had overnight to kind of sit. The wax has settled into the fabric. It is dry to the touch. So I know that in the last pictures it looked kind of wet. Now it's dried out, can't feel anything, and this is all perfectly sealed. And it's got a bit of a protection with that too. So you can very much use wax as a sealer. It's going to be perfectly durable on your fabric. Again, I've done it on chairs that it's been, 5 years now. We're still sitting on those chairs and it's still fine. Okay, the last part to our project is to make this actually work. So we have the seat cushion here, and we have our, I had to buy a new one because the last one, as you may recall, was broken. So I just want to get these down in place so that I can attach this part on here. So the nice part is I already have some holes in there. Okay, what I want to do before I try and drill is I want to kind of help it along. We've got to go through all this fabric and things. So I want to mark out the spots. So I've got a little bit of the IOD white ink, and I'm just dropping that into each of my little drill holes so I can see roughly where they'll be. And you can kind of see them marked out on here. And I want to take an awl. So this is just like a pokey tool. And I just want to put it on one of my white spots. And then just kind of hammer it. So all this is doing is kind of poking a hole through my layers of fabric and a little bit of a baby starter hole into my wood, so that when I go to start to drill, well, not really drill, just screw my screw into it, I stand a better chance of getting that to happen. Now, the other thing that I want to do in this case is, with the new hinges, these are the screws that came with it, and that's perfectly okay for screwing down into this wood, right? So That was fine going down, but they are too long to go into this wood. I don't want the screws to go through the wood and to be sticking up through the fabric and then poking people's feet or, you know, whatever happens to be on there. So with the old screws, I had these shorter screws, so I'm going to use those. So just some of the small little things that you have to consider. All right, and so all I'm going to do now is just take those down, and I gotta prop this up against myself a little bit. There, against my shoulder a little bit better so that I can take a bit of that pressure. And I'm just going to attach my lid. Okay, here's our finished project. We took that old little tired looking stool and we gave it a bit of an upgrade. We took a little bit of a hand mixed paint color for this, which I am loving right now. So I'm glad there's a little bit left over. I'll have to find something else to use it on. And we took some old fabric. This is just like an old cotton broadcloth fabric, almost like a drop cloth that I had. And we just simply stenciled it with the DIY paint that I had on hand. This is the Jamie Ray Vintage Stencil. All of this available on Queen Bee Creations Home or your nearest supplier. We finished it off with wax for sealing, the same DIY wax on the paint bottom, the painted wood, as it is on this painted surface. And now, super cute, super usable, nice and sturdy. We've got a little bit of storage with this. We've got a lovely footstool to be able to use, and we've saved something from the landfill, which is really what it's all about. So I hope this gave you a couple of tips, ways of looking at maybe some items that you've got in the home, quick way to be able to upholster something. So this is the same technique that you would use maybe on some upholstered chair seats for around a dining room table. Same technique, same thing that you would use. But I hope it also gave you some thoughts about the fact that you can use wax as a sealer on fabric. So if you're stenciling, just heat seal it first, do the wax over top. Feels great to the touch, and it's a great protector as well. I'm going to be looking for some other things to be able to upcycle, give you some additional tips and hints along the way, but I hope that this was something that gave you a little bit of information and a little bit of inspiration. Until next time, take care.